When I was first starting my journey, I really admired people who had the A to B to C to D journey. My friend who is a lawyer knew that she wanted to be a lawyer when she was 8. And then now she is a partner at a firm. Like very, very click. Sure. Her journey was very linear. And it used to frustrate me a little bit because I'm like, well, am I behind? And I think people think that a lot of the time they're somehow behind.
Right.
And what I realized was I was going off in all these different directions, trying different things, exploring different things. And really all I was doing was creating the spokes of what would then connect together as a web.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So if you're someone who's going off in a lot of different directions and all the linear thinkers around you are frustrated by your quote unquote lack of direction, you can take that one and try it out on them. You say, I'm just creating a web. I need to create the spokes, and then I'm going to come back and connect the dots, and the dots will connect. I promise you, somewhere in your life, the dots will connect.
Okay, right there. So somebody needed to hear that right there. Welcome to the Lovecast with Jamal podcast. I am your host, Jamal Jabanji. I'm a best-selling author, podcaster, full-time life coach, and a communications and cultural analyst. After spending over 20 years of working with people in various stages of struggle and challenge, and after traveling to many places all around the world, visiting many different cultures, I have discovered the common roots of human suffering, along with the sustainable solutions required to help people heal and become whole and liberated. This podcast is my gift to you to serve you on your journey into healing, wholeness, and liberation. I invite you to buckle in and to settle in to each episode here on this podcast. There's something for you in each conversation. Guys, I am super excited. Welcome back to the show, another edition of the show. We have a really, really fantastic guests and conversation in store for you today. And as I say to folks all the time, be prepared. With this episode, be prepared to receive. This is why we created it. I can tell you that my guest is here because she really has a heart to serve and help. And that's why this podcast exists. So be prepared to, if you have a pen and paper, I'm kind of old school that way, write it down. There's going to be a nugget here for you in this conversation. Or if you want to, if you're more savvy digitally, if you just have your cell phone, feel free to open up your note app and just take some notes. But there is something very, very important for you in this conversation. I am confident of it. But let me just tell you a little bit about our guest before I have her introduce herself. Catherine, actually it's Catherine. Is it? I should probably have figured this out. But is it Lazaruk? Is that right? Catherine Lazaruk? Lazaruk.
Yeah, like Lazarus. Like Lazarus, okay. Only with a K for kicking ass instead of an S for sleep.
I love that distinction. Catherine Lazaruk. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Yes, Catherine comes to us from a performance and education background with bachelor's degrees in music and education from the University of British Columbia. Before starting her business in 2007, she divided her time between singing in the opera, teaching music to primary school students, and she even did a stint in corporate training at one of the big 5 accounting firms. Catherine holds certificates in image consulting and advanced image consulting from the International Image Institute, which is based out of Ontario, Canada, and as well as her second level international designation, certified image professional with the Association of Image Consultants International, AICI. Totally. I didn't. Yeah. Which is amazing. I didn't even realize there was an association of image consultants, but there is. And Catherine has 2 coaching certifications. She's a certified leadership coach with Essential Impact and Professional, and she's also a professional certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. She helps professional women and men learn to walk, talk, act, and look like leaders, which I am really intrigued about. When she's not working, she can be found singing with her 18-piece vintage jazz big band. She writes, and she publishes collections of poetry. She's written "Love Is Not Pie," variations on a monogamish theme, and songs for my father. She enjoys food experiences as well as jazz, and walking on the seawall or watching movies with her film editor husband and her wide circle of very good friends in her home city of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So all of that said, Katherine, welcome. So happy that you're here on this podcast. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. It's so funny when you read the bio, it's like, okay, podcast is over. It's too much stuff.
It's quite the extensive bio you have there.
I've been around the block a few times.
Totally. And just a wide range of issues, of passions, of things that you're involved with, which is fantastic. How does it feel to be well-rounded?
I enjoy it. I think it's, I think that let me back up. When I was first starting my journey, I really admired people who had the A to B to C to D journey. Mm-hmm. My friend who is a lawyer knew that she wanted to be a lawyer when she was 8.
Oh, wow.
And then now she is a partner at a firm. Like, very, very click, click, click. Sure. Her journey was very linear. And it used to frustrate me a little bit because I'm like, well, am I behind? And I think people think that a lot of the time they're somehow behind.
Right.
And what I realized was I was going off in all these different directions, trying different things, exploring different things. And really all I was doing was creating the spokes of what would then connect together as a web.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So if you're someone who's going off in a lot of different directions and all the linear thinkers around you are frustrated by your quote unquote lack of direction, you can take that one and try it out on them. You just say, I'm just creating a web. I need to create the spokes, and then I'm going to come back and connect the dots, and the dots will connect. I promise you, somewhere in your life, the dots will connect.
Okay. Right there. So that's somebody needed to hear that right there. And somebody maybe who's listening to this knows somebody that needs to hear that. So right. pass this on right there. If you feel like you're aimless and have no direction, I love what you said, the confidence in which you just say that, because I can tell obviously that you've been living this, that you have a confidence that no matter what you may feel that you're aimless or behind schedule or not where you should be, but these are spokes in a wheel and they will absolutely connect. And when you see it, you'll know that. And I can testify to that too. Everything I've experienced in my life has prepared me for this moment, for doing what I'm doing today. Everything.
Yeah. I think the important thing to remember about that too is that it takes as long as it takes.
Takes as long as it takes.
Right? You're not like people think like the things that I'm doing now or that I'm poised to be doing. I don't think I would have been ready to do those things 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but I'm ready now. And it required a lot of personal work, and it required work experience with my clients, and it required life experience. It just takes as long as it takes, and you just do what you need to do to put the bricks in the wall until the wall is built.
Amazing. Well, one of the things, and I love that. That's so good. It takes as long as it takes, which means everything's useful. Everything is important. When I was doing a little bit of background on you, on your work, I knew that I wanted to have you on the show and have this conversation when I realized that you were an expert at presence. Yeah. I have never heard anybody say, yeah, that's what I do. Basically I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, I'm the present expert. It's about showing up with full embodied presence. And I'm excited because that's the game changer, really, because that's where your life is.
Of course.
But before we kind of get into that, I kind of want to touch on, I love that you mentioned that you have a friend who was 8 years old and she knew she wanted to be an attorney. She's an attorney today. What was that like for you? I'd love to get into the background a little bit. When you were a child growing up, what did you see yourself doing?
Oh, everything. I wanted to do everything, but primarily it was always artistic pursuits, creative things, or leadership things. But when I was growing up, I remember my mother had this album that we filled in over the years for my school years. And I was born in the 70s. So the options for what do you want to be when you grow up as a woman are pretty limited. I remember the limitations were like teacher, nurse, stewardess, when they still use that word, mom, like that was it. It was really, really limited. So I found that really challenging. And the only thing I think that sustained me was that I have a really strong I am center about me.
Okay.
Like I am, I don't know exactly how to define what that is, or I didn't know at the time, but somehow I still had that really strong central spark connection
To your
to
being, your
my being,
essence.
like early on.
Interesting.
And even though the mirrors that I had around me, because ideally when you're growing up, it's good if you have good mirrors. So a parent says, the child says, I'm an artist. And the parent says, yeah, you are. Go for it. Go try it out. Or the child says, I'm an architect. Great. Build some shit. Go. Oh, excuse me. Oh no. Getting real now. Better bleep it out.
No worries. No worries.
Right. Go build some things and then see what happens. Like the encouragement and affirmation and validation of the reflections of who you think you are important.
Yes.
And in my family is gritty. They are great at, my parents are great at the practicalities. They're great at meeting physical needs. They're great at meeting educational needs. They're great at meeting outside experience needs, extracurriculars. They're really good at the practicalities. I knew how to cook. I knew how to clean. I knew how to read. I knew how to write. Like, I knew all that stuff. But like many parents of that generation, they had no idea what to do with a child that had a wild emotional range, massive emotional range, big reactions, big feelings, big expression, big personality. And I think it was hard for them. Right. Really. And actually, my mother went to see a psychiatrist about me when I was 3 because I was so stubborn and really headstrong. And thankfully, the psychiatrist said to her, number one, you're expecting her to be 6 and she's 3. Wow. And I think sometimes we as people expect way more of ourselves than is developmentally appropriate for us, given what we've gone through.
Sure.
Then she said, you need to give her some choice or power. So you want to wear the red tights or the blue tights? No question about wearing tights, red tights, blue tights. And I think that we need choice, right, in our lives to feel empowered. We need to have some kind of agency, personal agency. And when you're a kid, of course, your agency is determined a lot by your environment. But when you're an adult, you have access to your own agency. And you just need to remember that and work on it and act on it. And then the third thing she said to my mother was, do not break her spirit because she will need it.
Oh, what a gift
that
your mother received.
Yeah.
First of all, agency.
That woman was, but thank you.
Don't break her spirit because she's going to need it in life.
That's right.
Yeah. So many. I wish I could echo that too.
Yeah.
So many parents, again, my parents, just like your parents, everybody's parents are doing the best they can with what they have. But I really, really wish that understanding was even in my household, because you will, like, if your spirit is broken, there's a line.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell, like, what's that line, but every parent, I think, as you get to know your child, there is a line that's there, and that line is their spirit, and you never want to cross. I love that you had such an awareness of, people. I mean, language can have baggage, but when we talk about we say I am, or essence, or being, I mean, it's really what we're talking about is your spirit, your essence. Yeah. And if that gets broken, if your connection to that gets broken through, beliefs, whatever it could be, just discouragement or trauma or whatever, then people really struggle when that's broken. So I love that your mother had that piece of advice. Don't break her spirit. So good.
And their view of where I should go was very different from my view.
Okay.
Of where I thought I should go. And that's how I got into teaching originally, was because I did my music degree, and then they're like, okay, now you need a real job. So I did my teaching degree. And it was awful. It was like one of the worst personal experiences of my life, because I didn't really want to be there. But I was financially dependent on my parents, and I didn't have enough strength or grit to kind of break from them at that time in my early 20s and go do it on my own. And I'm on some level, I'm grateful that I didn't, because I did finish that degree and it was useful.
Sure. Totally. And what was that degree?
In education.
Education. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I spent a number of years freelancing, singing and teaching. But unfortunately, the further along I got in both of those careers, the less I liked them, because they have quite narrow parameters. And I'm not a very good small box person.
Gotcha.
But I didn't know that really. And it took me 12 years and a lung tumor to figure out that I was being suffocated.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you say a little more about that? When you say that these, like, you're talking about music, right? In education.
Yeah.
So music and education have very small parameters. And
opera is like really regulated. You're really dependent on it's like acting, right? You're dependent on your physiology. The repertoire is set, the expectations are set, and you have to be skilled at learning how to interpret within a set of guidelines.
Okay.
And I was not at all interested in that at that time. I'm learning more about that now. Like I've reclaimed a little bit of that in my, in recent years. But at the time, I just couldn't. And I didn't have enough confidence in myself to find my own artistic voice. And really, music schools are not that great sometimes for artists because of the prescriptive nature of some of the kinds of instruction that you receive. So I think the biggest lesson I took away from that is, if people out there are listening and deciding what school to go to, really vet really vet where you're going to go and make sure that their delivery of the curriculum is aligned with your desire as an artist, because I think that's really important. Yeah,
totally amazing. So here you're trying to make a career in education and music, but it was very almost suffocating is kind of the word you used to describe that, and that eventually led to a tumor.
Yeah, so I think really what happened is it was so bad that I used to wish something would kill me because I wasn't going to do it myself. So
you were really out of alignment with your
and I'm really good at getting what I wish for. So that was a big wake up call. But when I was diagnosed, I decided to take medical leave, and then I quit. I had tenure. I would have had to kill somebody to get fired. I literally quit. And once I quit, I realized, I don't need to die in order to be free. So I did
I don't need to die in order to be free. So many people really feel like that in their life.
Yeah, it's desperate. It's a desperate place to be.
Because they're out of alignment with what their essence is, right? What they're doing with their professional life is that way out of alignment with their essence.
It's funny. It might not even be very far out of alignment, because I still really love teaching and I'm still really good at it. I just didn't like the environment that I was doing it in.
I mean, you're actually teaching now. So
Exactly. 100%. And these things are transferable skills. So I think when people are stuck, they can get blinded to the opportunities that exist and the skills that they offer that can be applied in different kinds of jobs.
Okay, let me ask you this. Did you, maybe at the unconscious level, do you think that there was some belief or some association that just you felt so trapped in because of maybe your program and your parents, and okay, this is what you need to do to pay the bills and you got to do it like this. Did you feel so trapped in that you felt like death was the only option, and then your body started to manifest that?
Yes. And so what happened is when I left, I was like, okay, I don't need to die to be free. So I worked on my health, and I literally, one of the activities that I did was I stood in front of the mirror and I wrote in Sharpie on the mirror, or like dry erase marker, perfectly healthy, right over my lower left lung. And I would just visualize over and over and over again that the tumor was gone. And 6 months later, it was gone. And I had that job doing corporate training at PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I managed to transfer over and end up completely healthy.
And it was literally emotional, spiritual.
I think so.
Realignment that your body began to.
So, yeah. And so the corporate training was closer to what I wanted.
Yes.
Right? I was so trapped in the teaching, and I like kids, I love music, but I just, we know so much about the way people learn now, and the education system has not changed since the Industrial Revolution. And I think that's doing a real disservice to students everywhere. So I love those things, but I just was dying in the environment, like the rigidity of it and all those things. And so the corporate training was closer. I basically, at that time, could only see what I hated about what I was doing. So I literally wrote a list of like everything I hated. And then I'm like, okay, what is the flip side of this? So if I don't like going into a school to work, what do I want to do instead? I'm like, I really want to go downtown and take an elevator into an office building and work. I really want to do that. And I want to be able to wear really nice clothes to work and not worry about them getting dirty. I want to work with adults, not kids. And so this job manifested or came about as a result of that investigation, and also as a result of really being well networked as well. It was a referral, and I had applied for a job there previously, and it didn't work out. But they remembered me, so they asked me to come back again when the timing was right. It was huge.
Unreal, amazing. I don't think a lot of people connect. I'm still kind of blown away with your example of literally feeling suffocated by life because you were so out of alignment, and your body manifested that metaphor through a tumor in your lung. And then just by shifting and getting, going deeper within, and I know that there's a process to that, so it's not as easy as I'm making it sound, but just from getting into alignment with yourself, your body began to manifest that healing, which is absolutely incredible. And I love what you said. Like, you got clear, you got radically honest. I hear there's a lot of honesty going, what is it that I really want? Oh, I want to go in a building. I want to take an elevator. I like to dress nice. I want to work with adults. So that's a measure of radical honesty that has to happen. And I always tell people, like, if you're not clear about what you want, you're not going to get it. Number one, because the universe or life, I always look at it's like a set of Legos, right? The pieces are there, but in order for them to be put together, you actually have to know what it is you're building.
That's right.
And that means you have to see it. And that, of course, that requires space. It's an internal space to be able to learn to see it.
Yeah.
It actually requires presence.
It does. It does. And you need way showers as well. People that are doing what you're doing to show the way. You're like, oh, I didn't realize I could do it like that. Or, oh, I didn't realize that was a job. Or I didn't like when the image consulting thing came along, because in the in-between time between when I was diagnosed and when I got the other job and was healed, I was working with a coach, and he was kind of an alpha male dude. And so one day he's like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up, little lady? Yeah. And I laughed, and I literally had a vision. Like, I had never had a vision before. I've never had a vision this clear since. Literally had the first tagline and the first company name that I ever used. And then it was image consulting. And I just laughed. I was like, that's not even a job. Like, he said, it's a job. You can do that job. And because there's no regulation in that industry at all, I thought, okay, I look all right. I've read some books. I'll just get a website and some business cards and start practicing. So that's what I did. And I built that practice around my corporate job. And then when the corporate job ended in the recession in 2009, I thought, okay, this is a great time to go full time. So that's when I went and got my certifications, because also I do not recommend that anybody go into image consulting or any kind of styling without some training.
Sure.
And the reason being, when you start talking to someone about their image, that's an incredibly sensitive psychological topic. And you can do a lot of damage without being aware if you do not have training in how to style somebody, or how to talk about how sensitive and how delicate that is.
Oh, fascinating. Can you say more about that? What makes image so vulnerable to a person?
It's your body. And my personal belief is that whatever container you're here in, you arrived on this planet in, is the perfect container to do whatever it is you're meant to do on the planet.
Okay.
So the sooner you make friends with your...
You got to say that one again. You got to say that one again. Okay. So listen up, people. This is so key right here. Say that again.
So I believe that whatever container you arrived to the planet in is the perfect container to do whatever it is you're meant to do on the planet. So
your body.
Yeah.
The container being the body.
Yep. Sooner you make friends with your container, the easier your life is going to roll.
So many people are at war with their body, their container.
Yeah. But our society encourages that. right? Our society encourages us to be disembodied, because if you're disembodied, you can be afraid and you can be controlled.
Fascinating. We could say so much about that. Okay. Okay. So making friends with the container,
Yeah.
falling in love with the container,
yeah. Or at the very least, accepting what it does for you. Like sometimes, people talk self-love and they're like, oh, it's so easy, just love yourself. But that is really hard ask for a lot of people.
Yeah. And what does it mean?
Messages they've had growing up, So even if you can just take a baby step towards being aware that you have a body and that it does things for you, like your feet carry you around all day. So thanks, feet, right? Your heart just beats away without you even asking it to. And great. Thanks, heart. Thanks, shoulders, for carrying all my tension.
Yeah. Becoming very mindful. What I'm hearing you say is become very mindful of this container, because
very much so.
If you needed a different container, you would have that.
That's right.
Because we have this body to do the work that we're here. And of course, what I'm hearing also is that there's an awareness that you have. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like there's an awareness that you have that we are all of us are here with some sacred direction, some sacred
I think so.
purpose in that sense.
Yeah,
some
I think
work
so.
to do. Okay.
For sure. I think I think about this world. I tend to think of it as a video game. like we're only here for a short amount of time, and then you're going along and you learn something, and it's like you get a diploma and you're like, level up, education points. Or you can move into a new place and you're like, level up, rented a great apartment, or got a new pair of pants, or I learned something about, and it's like soul evolution.
Sure.
I think is why we're here. And
soul evolution.
Soul evolution and your own growth. And I think that's why we're here, is for growth. And everybody's here to learn something, and everybody's here to do something.
Yep.
And
100%.
And it doesn't have to be, I think we get mixed up in this idea that it has to be, Beyonce level amazing, right? When that's not actually true.
No, you
don't know what your impact is, but I guarantee you have one.
Oh, totally. Well, I remember hearing a story of a guy who was really kind of had this existential kind of longing. He's like, I got to figure. He wasn't satisfied with his life. He felt like there's something more, and I got to do something. And he ended up going to this wellness retreat. It was like a 3-day wellness retreat. And so about 2 days into it, he's not liking it. And so he's just kind of like, it's kind of boring. I don't really know what the point of this is. So about after the second day, he pulls the director of this retreat aside, and he says, I know there's another day. It's like 3-day retreat, and I know there's only been 2 days. He said, but this, I don't know. It's just not, I don't know if this is for me. And the guy says, oh, I'm so sorry. Did something happen? Why are you dissatisfied? He goes, no, nothing happened. He goes, and I think that's the point. It's like, I don't think anything's really happening here. And the director just kind of looked at him and was like, what did you think what was your expectation? And he said, well, I tried not to have expectations. I tried to come in with an open mind and just be receptive. He said, but your brochure is a little bit misleading. And he's like, how so? And he says, well, your brochure says, come experience 3 extraordinary days. And he's like, yeah. And the guy's like, no, you don't. The director was like, I don't think you understand the meaning of the word. He's like, what do you mean? Extraordinary. It's 2 words.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. He's like, we're here to teach you about the ordinary.
Yes.
Because you don't like your ordinary life. You think it's boring, so you're looking for an escape. So we're giving you extraordinary, because if you can fall in love with the ordinary, wouldn't that be extraordinary living?
Yeah. It's pretty fantastic.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Are you describing a personal experience? Or did you?
Well, it didn't happen to me, but I heard the story, but I can resonate, right? Because
of course,
and I tell people this in my work as a life coach all the time. I say, we're going to change. People say, I want to change my life. And they have this grandiose, and I'm like, okay, that's all great. I said, however, what if we could just change your day?
Yeah. A little bit.
Because what's the life? Isn't it just a string of days?
Yeah.
And really what we're talking about is presence, right? We're getting back to this thing of presence. Like, it's not sexy in the typical sense of the word to just be here with a cup of coffee. It can be. Now, if you if you
If you're
learn to
embodied,
fall in, if you're embodied, this can
yes,
be magical.
deeply sexy, deeply sensual,
Cup of
deeply
coffee.
gritty and delicious and hot, cool
Okay.
breeze in the air. Everything is
Yeah.
better when you're present,
I actually heard somebody put it this way: you can have a love affair with life.
right? And I also recognize that we have systemic things in place that make life really hard for a lot of
Okay.
people.
Yep. Uh-huh.
There's that too. So I'm not suggesting that it's some kind of magic pill. But definitely what I've learned over time about presence is that it's a whole self thing. Because, right, when I started out, I really struggled, and I still do sometimes struggle with the superficiality of image because it is superficial. It's only on, I would say that it's actually surface, but it isn't superficial. So I'm going to say that again. Image is surface, but it is not superficial.
Okay. That's, I love that you said that. Image is surface, but it doesn't have to be superficial.
No. But I do really rail against the fake it till you make it, trying to be something you're not. And you definitely can use image tools for good or evil, right? You can use them
100%.
to express who you are truly, and you can use them to make people think things about you that are not true. Personally, I advocate the former, and that's what I'm interested. Like, I'm interested in image as a vehicle of self-expression and a vehicle of self-discovery. It's a way in.
Ooh, so good. Okay,
to
so
presence.
you're passionate about image as being a vehicle or portal to self-discovery, discovery of the I am essence
Yeah,
being.
that's how I got there. Yeah, and when I work with people now, I talk about, and in my book that's coming out in October, I talk about the 3 C's, the main tenets that I've distilled over 15 years of practice now. And the first one is core, which is what we've been talking about. Who are you when nobody's looking?
Uh-huh.
Right? Like, I think you are the same at 4 as you are at 104 in your essence.
In your essence,
right?
Because that spirit doesn't
Core.
change.
That's right. It doesn't
Core.
change. You came here with that spark. You're still that spark. That's your core. And then the next piece of that is your character,
Okay.
right? So, a core character, it's kind of the same thing, right? So, like, what are your values? What's your character? And then we look at congruence.
Okay.
So, and this could be congruent in yourself. I show up the way I am. I do what I want. I'm congruent. And it can also be viewed as what people expect to see, they see.
Okay.
For example, as an image consultant, I need to look a certain way. Well, I mean, I also like to do that. And I like to push the boundaries. But, if I show up looking, like 2-day-old sausage, it's not going to be so great. People will be like, what? And actually, early on in my career, because I was so interested in self-expression, and I wanted to be casual and funky and chunky and all, and expressing myself, I actually had people say directly to my face, I don't want to work with you because I don't want to look like you. And what I would say to them is, I don't want you to look like me either. I want you to look like you, and I'm really good at that. But it's not as convincing as showing up and looking a little bit more like what an image consultant, people think an image consultant would look like.
Yeah, it's a very tricky line. That's why I'm fascinated by this. See, I live in California, Southern California, and I live in the mountains. Right, my wife and I, we live up in the mountains,
nice.
About an hour and a half east of Los Angeles. It's a little more, depending on every community is a little different. The community we live in, it has people make fun a little bit, like they get the traditional mountain people stereotypes, But there is a county. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called Orange County, and Orange County, California gets a bad rap because it's very image conscious, but not it's like fake image. It's like surface level image that seems really plastic and contrived. And it is kind of, I've always had a disdain for quote unquote the fake culture where everybody is conditioned to look and act and talk and dress a certain way. And so when I heard when I started doing a little bit of research into your work, and you talk about whole person, whole presence, and that you have this, and this is what I found fascinating. There is a kind of this push-pull relationship with don't judge a book by its cover, which
Right.
is external, which I've always been like, oh yeah, there's so much to a book.
Yep.
Don't look at the externals, get into the deep depths, because that's how I felt about myself. I didn't
Right.
really like, for example, I didn't really always like my container. And
Right.
I felt like I didn't measure up to what I was here to do in the world because I'm too short or whatever,
Yeah.
could stand to lose a few pounds. I have this, over it. Just, you kind of, and I come from a family conditioning where it's just critical by nature. So you're kind of trained to look, at the self, the body, the mind, everything else through that critical lens.
Right.
But what I love about what you do is that you're redeeming this whole side of things, which is, no, what if your external image, because I'm convinced if we weren't here to be seen and heard, we wouldn't have a body and a voice.
Right.
Today's episode is sponsored by Free to Love Corporate Solutions. Did you know that any company or organization is only as competent, capable, and responsive as its workforce? And did you also know that, nationally speaking, it's been estimated that stress costs companies up to $150 billion, B with a billion, $150 billion in lost productivity every single year? What if your company and your place of work could actually be a source of healing and transformation for its workforce? Well, believe it or not, there is a growing community of conscious companies and businesses that see it as their mission to be a place of healing and transformation, not just for the products that they're offering to the wider world, but also they really desire that their place of employment would be a culture of healing and transformation for the workforce itself. And I've had the opportunity to work with a number of small businesses that are just doing fantastic work in the world. And I would like you to hear from the founder and CEO of a company that is striving to make a difference, not only in the world, but also in the people that work for the company.
I own a real estate brokerage, BRA Realty, here in Pennsylvania. And we have about 110 realtors. Jamal came out a few weeks back and did a training in replace of one of our regular trainings, and the feedback was phenomenal. Really stuck with me was he created a space of safety for a conversation of transformation to take place, where not just did agents walk away with great tips and insight about what's driving them, but also the ability for them to actually take the time and work on themselves in that session, specifically around getting clear on what matters most to them, and to the point where we had multiple agents that were actually crying. I had multiple agents come up to me afterwards just saying it was one of the best trainings we've ever done, and that we should have Jamal back once a month. So just to give you a quick shout out, Jamal, you did an amazing job. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for your ongoing coaching with myself. I've been working with you now for over 3 months and have had really, really great results. I intend to stick with it, as there's always room for growth, and having someone like you in my corner has been really helpful. So I appreciate everything you do, and thanks for being you.
So if you're a small business owner, maybe you're on the executive team, you're a founder, a CEO, or even if you're just in management of some level at a company or in a corporate culture where you oversee people at any capacity. And if you're interested in having a conversation where we may be able to explore how our program can assist you, can assist your company, and assist your workforce, I'd love to have a conversation with you about that possibility. All you have to do is go to my website, jamaljavanji.com/corporate solutions. Again, that's jamaljavanji.com/corporate solutions. You'll be able to fill out a form there, and we will get back with you and set up a time to have a conversation with you about how we can assist you in transforming your company.
Yeah.
So we're actually here to be seen, but there has to be some alignment with your physicality and your essence. And that can be expressed, like your body, your clothing, your image, all of this can actually be in line with the depth, not the shallowness
That's right.
of who you are.
Exactly.
Please
Yeah.
say more about that.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking of what one of my clients said. She said, everything in my wardrobe goes together because everything goes with me.
Everything goes with me. Okay.
Yeah, it belongs to me. And I think we all reach different points in our lives too. Like people also have this idea that image consulting is sort of one and done. Like once I know my elements of design, I know my colors, I know what styles work for me, I know who I am, then I'm done and I can just do it forever by myself. But we go through cycles. So approximately every 5 to 7 years, there's a shift for people and either their body changes or their work changes or their mind changes, what they like and dislike changes. And that's another, so it's more of a cyclical evolution with image and with obviously personal presence development. I mean, it's cyclical, right? And no matter what level you get to, there's always another little level, a little more refinement, another little stretch to go down, another little thing to think about. If that's something, if you like that kind of change, there are, I have some wonderful consultant friends and they look the same now as they did 10 years ago because they've found something that really works for them and they stick to it. And then I have other consultant friends who really change their look up. They look quite different from year to year and they have a similar kind of, they have a collection of, like their collection is eclectic. And so they lean into being eclectic, which means that they change things up more often. And even what you said about sort of the fakeness, the conditioning of looking one way, there are some clients that I work with that want to do those things because it is in line with how they see themselves.
Sure.
It's
totally
aligned with their field of work. It's aligned with what they want to do. The only thing that I talk to people about when I talk about fillers or Botox or boob jobs or whatever it is I just ask them to dig a little deeper. Are you choosing this because you're trying to escape what you have, trying to be different in a different kind of way? Are you doing it because of what someone else told you should do? Or is it really something that belongs to the depth of your soul? Right? And I mean, certainly like a good example is any of my trans clients, right? Their container is not really how they see themselves. And so it's like, go ahead and do body mods. Do I want to do it for myself? No, I'm not really into pain. So you're not going to catch me getting a boob job anytime soon because ow, no. But I really encourage people to think very, very seriously about who they are as people, because who you are. So back to the 3 C's where we talk about character and congruence around this expectation. The last element of that is choice. And I used to say that it was control because there's a lot of details you can control in your presence to accelerate yourself in professional settings or in life in general. You can control the way you walk. You can control the way you talk. You can control what you wear. You can control how groomed or ungroomed you are. You can control the kind of environment you want to live in. You can control the car you drive. You can control the briefcase that you carry. You can control the shoes you wear. Like there are many, many things that are within your sphere of control. And I used to call it control. But I changed a few years ago because I realized that the last element is really choice. You choose which things you want to control. Because image only matters where it matters. You're on the beach on a holiday with your family. No one cares. Wear the bikini. Show the stretch marks, right? Get the dad bod out. You're supposed to be enjoying the sand and the sun and loving being alive and in your body and feeling the water on your skin and feeling the sand and feeling the sun and laughing and whatever it is. And nobody cares. And the places where it does matter, hey, I'm going to get an interview for a job. I'm going to come on a podcast. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention, but I'm not going to, like, you're never going to catch me in a 3-piece Navy suit. I would die. I'd be like, I'm bored. That's not really how I'm going to roll. So this is the degree of choice, right? If you think of yourself as like a stereo, you can turn the volume up or turn it down, but you're still the same piece of equipment.
So good. Because I often tell people, every choice is either compulsive in nature or conscious.
Right.
So it's rarely is it applied to image.
Yeah.
Right. So because a lot of times I think what I was referring to with the Orange County crowd is that a lot of times the image is not conscious, it's compulsive because everybody's doing this or looking this way. I do this. But if it's conscious, if you bring a level of consciousness to it, it's like, is this what I like? Does this express my essence? Right. In the world, right? Because we're all here on purpose. And if we know what that essence is, then your image should in some ways broadcast that versus detract from it.
That's right. Yeah, it's really I like to call it's an amuse-bouche. It's a little appetizer.
Say that word again. What is it?
Amuse-bouche. It's just French for like, well, amuse is fun and then bouche is mouth. So it's like appetizer, like fun for your mouth.
Oh.
But you get an amuse-bouche, like a little bite before the meal when you're in a fine dining place. It's a teaser. It's a tester. It's like you want people to have an idea of who you are.
It's my second language, and I didn't even know that. So
maybe I just said it wrong. It's entirely possible I said it wrong. But it's this idea of giving people an understanding of who you are. I think it's quite kind, actually. It's a way to communicate to somebody, right?
Amazing.
That they have some idea of who you are when you show up.
Yes, totally. Okay, so I want to ask you about this because you said that when you work with a client or you work with somebody, that you don't see people as broken, but people aren't broken, but they may be. I think you said this. They may be squished.
Sometimes they're a bit squished.
Can you unpack that a little bit? What does it mean to be squished?
I think if you're squished, it means you're not being seen and heard fully in the environment that you're in. It's a little bit like being a plant in a pot that's root bound. It's not the right environment, and it can be hard to sometimes realize that you're squished and B, take the courageous self-examination and steps to move yourself out of a level of squish.
Okay.
Because the other thing too is from growing up, whatever situation you grew up in, your body is set to that level. So if your house was fearful, then your fearful is going to feel normal. If criticism was your norm,
even in your body.
That's right. In your body and in your being, criticism is going to feel normal. That voice yakking at you is going to feel normal. You're not even going to notice it until you're like, hey, wait a minute. You're not very nice to me. It's like, yeah, right? I don't know that it's there because it's programming. It's just installed in who you are until you hear something, you hear a podcast, you meet a friend, you hear something different from that. You need that spark to jolt you awake, jolt you, become aware of what's happening to you. For me, it was a friend of mine when I was still teaching, and I was just having this desperate anxiety. I had a bunch of stuff come up therapeutically from my past, some stuff that I needed to deal with. And I super stressed out. And he said to me, that is what stress leave is for. And I was like, what? Because my whole background is suck it up. Suck it up and move on. Just don't talk about it. Don't think about it. Just move on. Don't feel anything.
That's the programming.
That's programming. And then here was this person saying, oh, no, it doesn't have to be like that. And I'm like, what? Doesn't have to be like that? And now it's been this, 30-year journey of almost not quite 30 years, but like a while of going, okay, it's okay for me to be this emotional person. I need this level of emotional expression in order to do what I'm supposed to do on the planet, which to me is to get more people into an embodied, aligned state, because people who are embodied and aligned know their purpose, and then they execute on that purpose and theoretically make the world better for all of us. Because I think we have some examples of leadership right now that are not very congruent and are not very healthy and not very holistic. Right? We need a new kind of
that's an understatement.
Right? So anything I can do to help, largely I help women get into leadership. Some very brave men, mostly it's women, but there's a few brave men that come to work with me too. But getting people into leadership in a really integrated way, because the model is changing. So it's kind of interesting because my practice shifted a bit from straight up image consulting through to this executive coaching world by way of my clients, because they would start to go up the chain in their companies. And then they said to me, look, we really want you to come work with our executive teams, but we're tired of explaining to the people that write the checks that you're not really an image consultant, that you're doing more than that. And so, yeah, in 2018, they're like, you need to change your company name. I'm like, great. So I changed it to Lazaruk Consulting, and now I can do what I like. I'm not limited by any buzzwords or anything like that. So
amazing.
All the work now is really holistic. And now it's kind of exciting because I'm looking for ways to reach more people and make a bigger impact. So the book that I'm writing, that I've written, that's coming out in October, is called Executive Being, Humanizing Business One Leader at a Time.
Oof.
And it covers practices, 7 practices to become a more human leader and show up as a real leader. It also contains 7 appendixes for my very experienced leaders, because I find they're having the most trouble with this shift, because they're like, oh, the world is clamoring for people to show up and be real. And I've spent my whole corporate career masking and being like fitting into these rules of executive presence in order to succeed. And now I don't know what to do when someone shows up and, wants me to be on TikTok. What do I do with that?
Yeah. How do I show up? How do I be
how do I do
in
that?
my...
And how do I get out of that rut? So I've got some appendixes in the back of the book for the experienced leaders. And I wrote the book as a combination. So there's some poetry in the book because I write free verse, and there's some prose and there's some practical tips. And I've written it in a way that people have white space and they can think about it and they can jump around in it. It's not the traditional kind of book, but I really think that now that we have machines to do the machine-like things,
Right.
do the same thing the same way every time, every place.
Yep.
Now that we have that, we need to lean into being human harder than ever. And that means getting into the emotional life, getting into the life of the body, getting into the connection that we have human to human, getting into common ground. Like, that's what we need to lean into.
Because that's what only humans can do.
Right.
Which is interesting. And speaking about image and leadership, I think that I'm fascinated by that conversation. There was a senator, Pennsylvania senator, which this came up. It was kind of a joke, but I saw something deeper in it. And as you're talking about, this comes to mind. There's some decorum in government. Obviously, as you're a leader, and people typically wear suits. If you're a man, you wear a suit to the Senate floor. And he showed up in like sweatshirts, the senator, and it was a big controversy, and everyone was like, you shouldn't wear that. And of course he's pushing back, but I'm like, okay, without getting into the, who's right and who's wrong out of it, it's a deeper kind of question of what does a leader look like? And should a leader just do something out of compulsion or unconsciousness, just decorum, versus if it's just a reaction, then you're going to be out of alignment, right? My perception is, I think this was a little bit of a reaction on his part. However, the deeper question is, what does it really mean, though? Like, I think it's what he's trying to get at. Like, what does it mean to be authentic, to show up in my authenticity as a leader? And how should image reflect that?
Right.
Well,
I think it goes back to that congruence part, because there's all the things that you want, but then there's everything that people expect of you.
Sure.
And there is a correlation. There's a whole field now called enclosed cognition that actually talks about how what you put on your body affects the way that you think. And there have been several studies that have shown that dressing in sharper clothing increases your ability to think abstractly. Or for men in particular, they did a study where they had men in sweatpants. They had a control group of men who just wore whatever they arrived to the interview in, or to the experiment in, and then men who had suits. And then they put them into a negotiation situation. And the men that wore suits produced more testosterone and closed their deals at higher levels. So I sometimes say to my clients, my male clients, I'm like, if you want to produce or reproduce, get a nice suit.
Interesting.
So there's some of those things, but it is part of a broader discussion on what does a leader look like, because historically the way our brains work, they're just giant filing cabinets that get filled up with information, and our parents fill them and our society fills them and our job fills them and those things. So we have this idea of levels of formality. And I personally like a little bit of distinction because it does help us communicate better with one another. Like, so for example, in government, in Senate, that's a fairly formal place.
Sure.
Serious business is being done there. Serious things are being put into place that affect a lot of people. And therefore it does require a certain sense of ceremony, a certain sense of ritual. And to me, that level of formality is reflected in the level of clothing. So it's, and I agree that is completely societally programmed. This is what we have decided. We could have decided that wearing bangles and sparkles was a formal thing. And then that's what we would do. Right? It's like the debate about men wearing skirts. Well, men wore skirts in the 17th century in the court, and they wore high heels. And I sometimes think, well, if high heels were so great, men would still be wearing them. Right?
And they wore wigs.
Things change as part of society. So I'm quite curious to see how we will shape this debate and what we collectively decide. Because I do hear sometimes people say, well, society says, and society does this, and society does that. And I'm like, who do you think society is?
It's
We
us.
are society. It's
Yeah,
us.
yeah, it's who we are. People
Right?
people talk about this. It's probably another subject, but people talk about the government. I'm like, who do you
Right.
think the government is?
Yeah, it's us.
It's
It's us.
us.
Everywhere we go.
We have agreed on this. We
Right.
decide how it's going to be.
Well, theoretically,
Theoretically.
right? If you want to talk
Yes.
oligarchy versus democracy, it's a whole other thing. However,
Right. But
right.
we may be allowing it though.
Yeah, that's right. It's like there is still a formality, there's still a functionality. So I think
Yeah.
with his actions, it's more of he was being more of a provocateur,
Sure.
right, than anything
Sure.
else. And it's worth spurring the discussion. It's the same discussion that Chapel Roan is doing now, where she's saying, look, I'm a pop star, but I didn't sign up to be followed for 10 blocks in New York or harassed or being harassed on the street. I'm not working right now. Like, please, if you see me out in a restaurant, I'm having dinner with my friends, I'm not on the clock. I appreciate that you love my work. If you love my work, come find me at a book signing, or come find me at a concert, or come find me at a meet and greet. Come find me at the places where I'm working. And that boundary, I think, is something that hasn't been discussed. And image plays into that, and your presence plays into that. And I think that she has great presence of mind to be able to say, hey, wait a second, this is not okay, and I'm going to speak about it.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Okay, so I want to maybe we could wrap up with a couple of things.
Sure.
Because there's two kinds of people, and I'm thinking of the extremes, and there are people that are on a spectrum here, but there's two kinds of extremes of folks that are listening to this. One extreme, because I know people like this, has some programming around image, and what the programming says is, and this, some of it's even my programming growing up, oh, that's vain, this idea of vanity, right? So it's almost like, if you really are benevolent and you want to serve and you want to show up and really represent the world well, you don't need to care about image, because who are you to emphasize, there's starving people all over the world, and wear the cheapest clothes, just whatever works. It's all about functionality. It's not about image. And even the idea of being concerned about your image is vanity. So there's a lot of judgment about this whole conversation. So they may gravitate towards, any old kind of clothing, maybe any kind of possessions, cars and houses. They're all just like, maybe get the cheapest. It breaks down a lot. The things aren't really well taken care of. There's that side of it, right? What would you say to somebody who's listening to this conversation and they're like, well, what does it matter? My image. How would you address somebody who's in that vantage point, in that kind of framework?
Well, if you think that it doesn't matter, I think you're delusional. But also, my question is, as I said earlier, it only matters where it matters. So if you are looking to achieve a certain result, or be a certain way, or access certain spaces, then caring about what you put on your body is helpful for you. Just in a very practical, results-oriented way. With enclothed cognition, the idea that what you put on your body affects the way that you think, yeah, it makes sense to care about what you're putting on your body. Does it feel good? Does it make you feel good? Right?
How do you feel when you're wearing it?
How do you feel when you wear those things? Like, how, and the last question that I ask people, I'm like, well, how's that working for you? Because everybody has different values when it comes to clothing. So, for example, I place a very high value on comfort. I shop by feel. If it's itchy or scratchy or tight or I just won't do it. I don't want to do that. Whereas other people, there's a value that people place on influence.
Yes.
Right? They want to be influential. They want to make people think things about them to whatever end, right? They're an executive, or they're, I had one lawyer where we actually used the elements of design because he was a litigator, and he wanted to be able to put people off a little bit in the courtroom to set the people off that he was looking at. So what we did was we crafted his suit, his pattern, and the pattern in his tie, and the pattern in his pocket square. So they were all just slightly off.
Oh, interesting.
So it creates a sense of disharmony in people that are looking at him, and they don't know why. They just feel uneasy
Yes.
and they don't know why. But he wanted to throw somebody off guard, right?
To get their
make
attention.
them
So they're
"Hey,"
more, oh, I
right?
see. I love what you're saying. Sometimes
So
people
it's
will do
strategic.
this with language. They
That's
will
right.
say certain things to jolt
Exactly.
them,
Exactly.
but so that when you're jolted, though, you're more receptive, you're listening, you're paying
Exactly.
attention.
Yeah, it shakes you up, right? Gives you a bit
It's a,
of plasticity. So it's this idea of making these choices. So when you say someone is like, oh, it's vanity to look after yourself, I'm like, okay, you can believe that if you like. How's it working for you? Great. But I really believe that caring for your container and putting things on that make that container feel good and look good and make you comfortable, make you feel delicious is a deep act of self love and respect and
mm,
care for the container that you're here in to do whatever it is you're meant to do.
oh yeah.
It is a
Well,
way of aligning with your purpose.
I love it. And you know, where this is exciting for me is really more kind of what you said is the unconscious aspect of it, not
Right.
like what you're communicating subconsciously. Like for example, that
Yes.
client who were the, you know, the patterns were just a little off to get
Yeah.
people, because that was a very conscious, coordinated form of
Absolutely.
communication. It's actually
Absolutely.
communicating.
Yeah.
So people
100%.
don't think of image as communication, but
It is all the
it is
time.
yeah. So it's just not. See, this is why your work's so important, because
You don't
a
talk about
lot
it.
people don't think of image as communication, but communication is essential to
Mhm.
getting, especially if you're like I'm passionate about helping people think differently, helping people perceive differently, helping people go beyond their limits. Well, that's communication.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've just not seen image put into that conversation, which I love that you're doing that, because that's just so powerful.
Yeah.
Um,
One part of the puzzle.
one part. So, okay, so let's go to this other extreme, because I also know people like this.
Okay.
Image is everything. They are so preoccupied, and I have found, you know, again, my biggest concern in life, or my biggest pet peeve, I should say, is people who are unconscious, or people who are not curious about other human beings. And so
Hmm.
it's been my experience that a lot of people who are into image are very self-absorbed, but they're not very curious about other people. And so I've kind of developed a kind of like this, oh, like that's a shallow, like that person, they are all about how they look and how they may come across, but they don't give a rip. They're not here. They don't see you. They're not really interested in connection. So that's kind of I'm a little biased. So
That's okay.
with that, what would you say to somebody that is just so image conscious? They're all about buying the right, it's almost retail therapy. They just shop all the time
Yeah.
because they're after a certain look, but they don't even know why. How would you address a person like that?
Oh, I'd be like, what are you running from, darling?
Okay. Wow. Okay.
What are you running towards? Because there are clients who are very fashion forward. They love the latest and greatest. They love the pieces of the image. They love that sense of detail. They love the hand of something. And for those clients, I'm like, absolutely, you can have all of that. Is it in alignment with your body? Like, are you just putting the latest thing on because it's the latest thing, or are you putting that latest thing on because it actually suits you and works with you? In my own experience, I shied away a lot from status and level of attention to detail because I don't really want to be a walking billboard. I don't really like wearing a logo. But there are people that really enjoy it because what they have is beautiful. Now,
Sure.
recently, with the sort of explosion in quote unquote luxury brands, the quality has gone way down and the price has gone way up. And really, you're just paying for the logo now. So
The logo.
often,
Yeah.
my clients who want that kind of high end feel and look, we just end up going custom because by the time you're spending $1,000 or more on a piece of clothing, you can go custom and get exactly what you want, exactly in the right color, exactly in the right fit that belongs to you 100%. It just doesn't have a label on it, right?
I see.
So I think people that are really concerned about their image in that way, I want to know, is that making you more comfortable with who you are and more aligned with who you are, or less comfortable and more self-conscious?
Yes. And I love the question you ask, what are you running from?
Yeah. What are you running from?
Yeah.
Like, what are you running from? What are you trying to cover up? Or what are you trying to aspire to? Or what are you trying to do here? And like for me personally, I had to kind of get over that because I reached a point where I wasn't doing a really great job with my own image, and we need other people. So I phoned my friend Michelle, who's a consultant in Ontario. I'm like, help me. I'm stuck. Help me out. And she was in Vancouver with her husband for a conference, and she came to see me at my office, and um, we had a conversation. And then she said, you have this element of elegant about you. And I was like, shut the front door. What are you talking about? Like, I am not like, I don't understand what you mean. Because to me, elegant was, Grace Kelly, very poised, don't rock the boat. And I am a complete front disturber. Like, I'm not a non-rock the boat. I'm a rock the boat person. And what she said to me, she says, no, no, no. She goes, it's not like that. She goes, you have a very high level of attention to detail. You love things to be finished. I love, like, for example, having the right cutlery and having it all match. Not the right, but like something that matches, something that's aesthetically beautiful, something that, I have like little tiny salt and pepper shakers when I have people over for dinner because they're just so cute and they belong to my mother-in-law. So they're meaningful as well. But I love detail. And when I got my first very beautiful car, which I still own, I struggled with the idea that now I'm driving this. So I have a Mercedes C350, which is beautiful. She's lovely. Her name is Madeline. And
I love that you named your car. That's fantastic.
I know it's very anthropomorphic of me, but anyway. And I realized I'm like, okay, people will think certain things about me because I'm driving this car. But why am I driving this car? I'm driving this car because when I got in it, it made me laugh. And I love the feeling of this vehicle, the power of it, the beauty of it. It's got a great sound system. It gets me where I need to go. It's highly practical. Except for snow, terrible in snow, but I really love the experience of it. And yet, soon after I got it, I'm driving downtown Vancouver and I'm loving the day and I'm smiling. I feel great. I look over and smile at this woman who's driving, I think she was driving a Toyota, something next to me, and I get the double finger. I'm like, okay, today I'm the jerk in the Mercedes, I guess.
Interesting.
But it's like, it's understanding what's underneath all of these things.
Consciousness of that.
It. Yes.
I love that you shared that. I recently, within the last year, was on a business trip, and I rented a car, and I'm one of, because I told you my background, my programming is all, it's about so I always get the economy cars,
Sure.
the cheapest car, and
There's
I got
value in that.
Totally. And I came in late. My flight was a little bit later. So, sometimes you show up at the car rental places and the cars are gone. So there was no economy cars left. And they said, we're so sorry. We have to give you an upgrade, but it's on us. And they gave me a sports car.
Great.
It was a Mustang. And it was like, so they were like, is that okay? And I'm like,
sure, that's okay.
Because I didn't choose it, it felt okay. And I was like, well, if that's all you have. So then but I drove it and I was like, this feels good.
Feels nice.
This feels really nice. And the power, and I was my big thing was, I'm the person who justifies, like my brother was always into sports cars. So I was like, that doesn't matter to me, but I'm driving this and I'm going, let me get honest. The energy of that sports car when I was driving it, I had a direct aid in my performance in what I was doing there. It was doing a speaking event, and I could feel, I was like, this is not an accident. There was this serendipitous connection between the sports car and the energy and my performance. So I came home and I bought a sports car for that reason, because of the energy. But I never looked at it as image.
That's right.
But it is.
Yes.
It's the feeling. It's conscious. It was conscious.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. Money's not going to make you happy. It doesn't matter. But like, I have a friend who drives, like, she drove a Toyota, like a little tiny stick shift Toyota for a long time because she doesn't care. She wants the car for practical reasons. Get me to A, to B, to C with as little cost, because I value getting there. And the experience does not matter to me in this way. But she'll spend money on concert tickets because she loves that experience.
Sure.
So in anything with this whole presence and leaning into being human, it's like we're here to have sensory experiences. And what do you value? What's going to turn you on? What's going to make you feel amazing? Well, do more of that, even in the tiniest ways, like any amount, the tiniest ways. How can you do that?
Yeah, and how does your image or outfit or what you're wearing enhance what you're on the earth to do?
Yeah, exactly.
How does it feed into your essence? That's so beautiful. It can be done consciously. Your attire, your image can be conscious. I love it. I could talk to you all day, Catherine. This is fantastic.
I could talk to you all day. I love these kinds of conversations. I could geek out on this kind of philosophy and psychology all day, all night, 24/7. For
sure. And I'm very passionate personally about leadership and the role that leaders can play in really more the subconscious. Like if somebody walks in the room and their posture is straight, even though I'm not consciously looking at that, it affects me because I know that they have paid attention to their presence and they've come in with because that's all posture is consciousness, awareness. So like if someone brings that level of consciousness into every aspect of life, including how they are appearing and broadcasting their essence to the world, it makes a difference. And we, like, as we touched on, this is probably a different conversation. We are in desperate need for conscious leadership today in our country and in our world. And so to see that this is actually a part of the conversation, I think is really, really, really important. So thank you for what you do. You have a book coming out.
I do.
It's called, tell us the book name. What is the title of the book?
The book name is Executive Being, Humanizing Business One Leader at a Time.
Executive Being, Humanizing Business One Leader at a Time. Yeah. And that'll be out in
October. It's available for pre-order now on Amazon.
Okay.
And so if you go look up Executive Being, Humanizing Business One Leader at a Time on Amazon, and you pre-order and you DM me or email me or shoot me a screenshot, then I'll send you a little something to say thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we'll get that in the show notes.
Great.
So that'll be there. And where can people find you and stay in touch with you and your work?
I'm easy to find. There's only one other Katherine Lazaruk that I know of, and she's a physicist in Iowa, I think. So in any case, if you look up Katherine Lazaruk on Google, you'll see me. But I'm easy to find on Instagram. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. And those are the two places where I'm most often hanging out. And you can always just go to my website, lzrkconsulting.com.
lzrkconsulting.com.
Yeah, find me there.
Fantastic.
And please come and find me, because I'm really, like, if you want to get real, I'm really good at that. I'm good at untangling those things for people. If you feel like you need help, call. Please call. You deserve it.
You deserve it. Absolutely. 100%. Thank you for this conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Of course. Well, guys, we're always interested in your feedback. I look forward to hearing from you. And until next time, take care. Thank you so much for listening all the way through to the end of this podcast episode. When you show up and you receive the gift that was for you in this episode, it not only benefits you, it benefits all those that you love and the wider world around us. This work that you're doing, the hunger that you have, it's so important, and I commend you for tuning in and being open. If this podcast has been a blessing to you, then I would ask that you do something to give back to this episode, to give back to this podcast. One of the things that you can do, and it's cost-free, very easy, and is super helpful, is if you'll just go to iTunes and rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Also, if you'll go to Spotify, if you listen on Spotify, go to Spotify and rate and review this podcast on Spotify. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. It makes a huge difference in the algorithm, and it helps people find our show. Thank you again for being here. And until next time, take care.